Before we dive in, here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
Meet Zinnia.
You are being very polite to someone who is attempting to kill us.
Her wife, Saffron.
You know I'm wildly, madly in love with you.
And their best friend, Goldie.
Glad we didn't miss all the fun.
Swords in hand, they defend their city from the worst of humanity.
I am Lord Buxton Blue.
Equity Electric.
Herr Haig. Virgil Walcott. Vicious Suave.
Follow their adventures on the Swashbuckling Ladies Debate Society audio drama podcast. Available now at truestory.fm/swashbuckling.
Hey Pete, ever wonder what Steven Spielberg's favorite film is?
You know, Andy, I've heard he loves classics like Lawrence of Arabia, Meet Me in St. Louis.
Imagine chatting with him about why those films resonate with him so much.
That's exactly what we do on our podcast, Movies We Like. We've had incredible guests like actress Dee Wallace, cinematographer Eric Messerschmidt, director Steve Miner, and former Disney animators Tom and Tony Bancroft.
They share their favorite films and the impact they've had on their careers, offering fascinating insights into the craftsmanship and storytelling techniques that make these movies so special.
If you're curious about the magic behind the scenes, subscribe to Movies We Like from True Story FM on your favorite podcast app. New episodes are released on the fourth Monday of each month with early access for our members.
Join us on Movies We Like as we explore the movies we all like with the people who make them.
And Stephen, our people will call your people. Let's make this happen, puppy.
Subscribe today.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Star Wars Generations Podcast. Today we are talking about some of the best television a lot of us have ever seen in Star Wars or just in anything. Today we're talking about the thing that's probably going to get far less Emmy nominations than it should. Today we're talking about a thing that I think has changed me as a fan and as a person, and we're, now they've thoroughly overhyped it. I'll hear if these people had similar thoughts. It's myself, Matthew, himself, Alex, herself, Erin, not Erin, all here to talk about Andor Season 2, Episodes 7, 8, and 9. What'd you guys think?
I loved it.
I was unable to sleep last night because I was just like, my brain was spinning. I stayed up late to watch it, and I was just like, wow, that might have just been the peak of television.
Yeah. There was so much that happened, so much I want to talk about, so much for our characters, so much in terms of like any previous doubts that Tony Gilroy isn't just making a very stern comment on what's happening in the world today is gone. And while I don't think it was bad or boring, am I the only one who's left completely not remembering anything from episode 7? Because I feel like all it was really doing was kind of like the lead up to
Was that the
episodes
first
8
one?
and 9.
Oh,
which were
yeah.
just the important ones.
Yeah, the only thing I remember from the first episode was they went to that weird like healer woman who I think could use the force to some level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And she was like feeling his like laser burn and like was able to make it feel better. And I think the point of that episode was really just to like establish that Andor was now living on Yavin, his like vibe, and like you said, kind of put all the characters where they needed to be for the insanity that would ensue
Right.
in episode 8.
I agree. I think though that scene, especially you were talking about, was brilliant foreshadowing, and also really helping to drive home the connections between Cassian and then Jyn Erso in Rogue One, because basically you have a force-sensitive person who's not really a Jedi, but is force-sensitive, reaching out to him and telling him that he has a purpose and that he has a mission, which is exactly what Chirrut did for Jyn in Rogue One. And I just thought that, it just sets up all these little things. It sets up more about where Syril is. And, like, I don't think any of it was bad. And I think it probably added to episode 8 and 9. It's just that episode 8 and 9 hits so damn hard that's kind of what we're left with.
Yeah, I really enjoyed episode 7. I liked seeing, like, I think in the second batch of episodes, we got like some of Cassian. Honestly, no, yeah, we've gotten a good amount of Cassian and Bix's relationship throughout the whole show, but I always enjoy like seeing how it's changed.
Yeah.
And like that they take the time to like kind of establish the main characters and where they are emotionally or mentally.
Mm-hmm.
So I do appreciate that they do some like kind of world building or catch up almost in the first
Mhm.
episode. I did notice like most of the way through the episode, I was like, where's Mon Mothma?
Yeah.
Like she just like wasn't really, if I'm remembering correctly, she wasn't in that episode very much.
No, and she was almost. I don't think she was ever in episode 8, the second episode.
Mhm.
It was very much that second episode was almost entirely on Ghorman, if not actually entirely on Ghorman. And then the third episode obviously was almost entirely back on Coruscant, except for the
It was
fourth that they were on Yavin.
all Mon Mothma for the 9th episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, first episode. I mean, the first episode was still interesting. I mean, again, it like established that even a year in, that like Andor and Bix were like having a happy relationship. Andor was clearly in love. I was a little confused. Well, I guess it's been a year, I guess, but the last we saw, is it? I could be remembering wrong because there are a lot of characters in Andor, so forgive me, but. The guy who showed up at the beginning of that episode, what is his name? It starts with an M. Marks?
Oh, Willman. First of all,
not an M. Willman.
No.
Was he the one that, like, at the end of the previous arc, like him and Saw Gerrera were inhaling gas?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah. So he doesn't want to tell Andor and them that he was with Saw Gerrera, but now Homeboy is just back and like no Saw at all. So that was a little confusing, but I guess it has been a year.
I think at this point we're supposed to think, and if you've seen Rebels, this is reinforced. Some of the books we've read have talked about reinforced this. At this point, there is a lot of movement and connection between the Phoenix group, Saw Gerrera's group, and Luthen's group. And at this point, it's almost that most of the other Rebel groups are all kind of starting to unify, at Yavin with Phoenix group and those others and Saw's group kind of being a part of that. Saw's being kind of outside of it, but with Luthen's group very much being the outsiders. Also, is Willman Brasso's son?
No,
because Cassian has a strong connection to him, and I wasn't quite sure why.
His father was killed in the first season. He was like the owner of the shop, if I remember correctly. The shop
that
that
sounds right.
Bix worked at.
Also, my camera's gone out, for which I apologize, but go on.
That's okay.
They were all like Ferrex survivors. So I think the family, they're just kind of, they see themselves as family. Like they're just tight.
Stone and Sky.
That makes sense. Stone and Sky.
Yeah.
Mine hit hard. But yeah, I think, I think there's a lot of details we're skipping over, and you're right. Like, I'd be curious to hear more about sort of where he goes with Saw and then what happens to him. But I think we're just focusing on the things that are most important.
Right. That's fair.
I was thinking that they're not doing a lot of the kind of fan service drop-ins that a lot of the Filoni shows have gotten known for. And while I mostly like those, like I was definitely hoping for at some point during the end of episode 3 of episode 9, but the third episode of this arc, I kept waiting for some little mention of the Phoenix crew or anyone else from Rebels.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, we'll get to full explanation of that why. And we didn't get it, but I was actually totally okay with that. Like it felt like this was a complete full story they told, and we know that connection. We don't need it to have been even more spelled out.
I was more bummed that Masamita was not presiding over the Senate when that speech. Who is that weird dude who keeps presiding over the Senate?
Yeah,
they established him as yet another kind of like lower down on the list. I think part of the point was supposed to be that this wasn't thought to be like a major session. Like in the actual Senate, when it's not thought to be a big important vote, a lot of times the vice president isn't there. The majority leader might not be there. It'd be like the third and fourth in command of the different Senate factions. So that's why I took that.
Yeah, it's a fair point. Real quick before we get into the I understand the 8 and 9 of the meat. And I want to say one more thing on episode 7, was just that I will say the setup was done, I think, really well. Like showing them returning to Ghorman, and how like I really appreciated how the guy checking in Andor remembered him from the previous encounter and was like, she will report you. Like, I'm gonna try and keep you off the books. Like she is being loyal to the Empire, basically.
Right.
And like you can kind of see like the characters we left behind in the past, like how they've grown bolder, but also a little more frantic, and just like the state of Ghorman. Like, I mean, episode 7 and obviously the whole beginning of episode 8 was just meant to build that anxiety because you know it's coming, but like oh my god, I wanted to peel my skin off. I was so anxious.
Oh my god, it was horrible. Yeah.
My ADHD means that I often have to be doing something else while I'm watching something, and I feel like I can still totally connect, but I'm like playing chess on my phone or something like that. Episode 7, I didn't look at my phone much. Episodes 8 and 9, I just was so riveted, and you're right, they did so much. So let's go into that. Normally we talk about the different plot lines for different characters, but these were really kind of the big heavy hitter episodes where everything comes together, and I think it's easier to just talk about like them episode by episode. So on episode 8, a couple characters had individual journeys, but there was obviously just this larger story. We see the massacre, the beginnings of, and in some ways the culmination of what Mon Mothma names as the genocide of the Ghorman people that now the Empire is doing openly. What do you think of that episode? How did that hit you?
To me, it's like, if you've seen Game of Thrones, yes.
Yeah.
Battle of the Bastards, anybody?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Legendary.
that is how I felt. Like I was just excuse me, I was so locked in. I was just like jaw open, so stressed, but like it just felt so believable and real.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't go the way I thought it was gonna go. I mean, the massacre itself, that's exactly what I thought was gonna happen. The stuff with Dedra and Syril, though, that surprised me.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into their story.
Yeah.
Yeah, the actual massacre. So the lead up, I mean, it was diabolical, but it's like,
oh my god, yeah.
this is the type of like underhanded, shady shit that like countries in the world have done, and like it allows like governments to commit atrocities, and it was because you could see it from the outside perspective happening in slow motion, and the old man leader whose name I do not know, on Ghorman, was like, it's a trap, like this is a trap, and you could just see, I mean, just, oh my god, it was just so diabolical to let them all back into the square, to know that a protest will happen, then send in the rookie enforcers, knowing something's going to go wrong, and then plant a sniper to incite the riot, and like the planting of the sniper. I don't know if it's a direct call out. I mean, there's obviously conspiracy theories about the Donald Trump assassination attempt, and that felt like maybe a slight reference towards that, but also like maybe it's just like, we're putting a sniper out here to incite this riot, and like it makes you call into question so much of like what you know about like, you know, the riots and things that go on in the world, like how much was orchestrated, because at the end of the day, what the ISB did wasn't that implausible to happen in our world as well, which I think made it. But yeah, that was just and even leading into the massacre, I just want to note, I do think I was not hard correct, because in the end he picked going after Andor, but Syril, I mean,
let's stick a thumbtack in Syril. I want to get to that, but I want to talk about like the build up first, because you're right. There were so many things this was referencing, and I think if you're reminded of things in our own life, we're very much supposed to. This is, police treatment of Black Lives Matter, and trying to like herd them into specific areas and incite violence. This is what's been happening in Palestine and Gaza, but it also goes much deeper than that, much further back than that. For me, when I heard that phrase, "The galaxy is watching. We are Ghor. The galaxy is watching." For me, what is immediate? I'm a big student of the '60s and '60s activism. And one of the most famous moments of that, it was in 1968, in late August 30th, there was a huge protest outside the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, and it led to what was often referred to as a police riot. This was what an official commission looking into it, that the police rioted in terms of going so overboard in their violence. And I don't think anyone was killed, but a lot of people were horribly injured, mass arrests, and the same kind of tactics. And during that, the people were shouting, "The whole world is watching." And that's a phrase that comes originally from a Bob Dylan song, but it becomes something that was said. And part of the idea of it was because the cameras were on them. And the idea was that, the world is going to see what you're doing and see how wrong it is. And there's an irony about that I'll talk about in a second. But I just wanted to start there that, like, they clearly knew exactly what they were doing in terms of, like, referencing stuff from modern day, but also being like, look, we can look back in history. I mean, they can look at back to, go back even hundreds of years to how, like, union protests and early civil rights protests and stuff like that. There was so much evidence of government officials trying to incite violence or trying to do things so that they can say, look, these people are just so violent. The phrase they kept using of they don't respect imperial norms, all of this is, yes, there's hyperspace, yes, there's laser guns, but this is exactly our own world.
Yeah, and like I've covered many protests over the years for the Star Tribune and other news and stuff, and like, I mean, this is very much like what it feels like in the middle of these protests. Like, it's just like, there's like this almost like baseline of like, just like everyone is like, sticking together, and like there's this camaraderie, like, when they're singing together, but also there's like there's like fear built up, and all it takes is one push the wrong way, one person to make a choice, and it just, like, because everyone's so on edge, it just sparks this like group reaction, and they created basically the perfect storm for that to happen. Like, the protesters were being peaceful until the ISB decided to fire the shot to spark it. They just knew that was going to happen. There was no doubt that that's what would happen, because that's what happens and I've seen firsthand in real life protests.
Yeah, like that was always the plan of this whole thing, the whole barricading the plaza and then opening it back up and walling the people in. Like, that was always the plan, which is just like so chilling.
It really is.
Yeah,
like the one officer said to Dedra, he said, like, I'm the trigger, you're the finger. Make sure you're available.
Oh, yeah, that was so good. Yeah. That puts so much the guilt, the responsibility on her shoulders, which I think we'll talk about her story in a minute.
Yeah.
Just further on that, though, I thought also what was really brilliant is, like, that protest was pretty much nonviolent. There was one guy who threw a rock, and I think there was a couple other people sort of shoving and stuff like that, but nothing lethal. But then once the shooting started, a lot of people had brought weapons to that. And like that, that doesn't make anything the ISB was doing okay by any means, but it also just further shows, like, this is how quick it was to instigate, because a lot of those people were coming expecting violence. They weren't going to start it, and the ISB was completely wrong to start it, but that was the tinder. Everything was ready to burn, and that's exactly what the Empire had been doing. That's why they'd been inciting all this, so that they would get more people who wanted to bring weapons and have all this stuff. Because then, and in some ways, to me, that was one of the greatest ironies of this, was the reason why people were shouting in Chicago, the whole world is watching, is that it was true. And that's considered by a lot of people one of the real sort of breaking point moments of people starting to side with the long-haired hippies and think maybe Vietnam is not actually the best thing, because we saw this horrible violence by the police towards nonviolent protesters. But here, and I thought it was somewhat chilling, is they were saying this world's a little bit worse because none of the press were actually covering it properly. All the press covered it with this propaganda spin of the terrorists, they incited the violence, they did that. And I thought the way they showed that was just so chilling and so brilliant.
Yeah. It was so dystopian to, like, have the news feed and, like, see multiple reporters saying one thing, and then it's like immediately pans to, like, the worst possible situation.
Right.
Well, the news organizations there too were also very much like under the control of the Empire. Like, it was very much like state-owned media, which is obviously so different from the free press that is supposed to exist. Like those news organizations were there specifically to, like, I don't even call them propaganda organizations, were there to basically put out like propaganda and false narratives to fuel, the galactic, for the uninterested or uneducated or just too far away. I mean, like Syril's mother, obviously we saw earlier, like the foreshadowing of like him telling her to stop watching, the HoloNet, basically, like stop watching the propaganda, because everyone was just meant to believe that Ghorman was this aggressor, this rebellious aggressor that was the problem, and not the Empire. So
I don't think think all of them were supposed to be state-owned. I think there definitely is a state-owned media arm at this point in the Empire, but I think some of them were supposed to be, like, in theory independent, but, like, kind of Fox News or Breitbart or things like that, you know?
Yeah.
I think, especially because, like, and we'll talk about this more later, like, there's obvious connections between there and what's happening in Israel and in Gaza, and I think that's, to me, that's what really that brought up, is about how much the media continues to spin it as this, like, war against the terrorists and the uprising, instead of looking at, like, no, this is a genocide of an oppressed people kind of a thing.
Yeah, I just see, like, I mean, when it comes to, like, obviously working in the newsroom, like, it comes to, like, those organizations like Fox News and Breitbart, like, I mean, they're not state-owned, but they might as well be, because they're just willingly putting out false information versus, like, other organizations, like, actually try and put facts out there. So to me, those organizations that were being shown in the episode were very much the kind that, like, just don't care about the truth, don't care about anything but just, like, feeding the same lies and crap to their listeners, that causes things like the Empire to continue to grow and build and be trusted, because people are being given false information.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I feel very strongly about all the new shit. It's infuriating.
Good reason.
Well, you should.
So let's talk about the Syril and Dedra of it all. Syril and Dedra of it all. Erin, what'd you think?
I was not expecting any of that to happen.
Uh-huh.
When Syril got put in the closet with a bunch of droids, I really thought they were going to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what is this fucker doing in here? And then he just snuck out, ran up the stairs, went in, and she was like, hey, how's it going? And he was like, what the fuck did you do?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, is this true? Did you fucking do this? Like, how long did you know? And she's just like, whoa, 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 very aggressive. But then he like grabs her shirt and like really pulls her, and she starts going like, ow, like, Syril, you're hurting me. And it just got worse from there. I'm not going to go into like graphic detail, but he nearly chokes her out, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then just runs away and leaves into the crowd.
I think that Syril, I mean, over the 2 years or whatever he was on Ghorman, like, actually very much sympathized with the Ghorman people, and, like, saw, I think from the very beginning, Syril was like, he was buying into the Kool-Aid, but he was misguided. He was very misguided, but he truly believed in, like, justice, like, at his heart. What he believed in this, like, like, people should not be, like, his whole arc begins in Andor season 1 with, like, people are killed. He wants to find Andor because he killed 2 workers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that initially Syril sees the Empire as, like, order, law and order. They're like, and, like, again, many people in our world believe that, like, the government or the police or law and order, like, that is justice. They don't see the broken system. And I think it took Syril all this time being here, seeing all the lies, feeling he was being lied to. Even though he was like basically cozying up to the monster, he, like, couldn't see it fully, and then finally he could. And it just, he hit a breaking point. But you could see before that moment, like, when he was talking with the old man, some of the other Ghorman rebels, he was, like, trying to give them intel, trying to help them and save them, like, and then, like Erin said, I mean, he's just, like, he realized what was happening. He realized he'd been lied to and used. And clearly Dedra was struggling with the whole plan as it was. Like, she clearly had very big moral misgivings, but, like, still went through with it at the end, which is the sign, of a fascist. And Syril was like, I cannot fucking believe this. Like, I cannot believe you. Like, he, like, she tried to hold him in. She tried to be like, you just listen to me. You do what I tell you. And then he, like, turned it on her. And she looked so surprised. Like, she could not even imagine that he was doing that to her. And he rightfully walks out. Honestly, when he, like, assaulting her was not great at all. It was very hard to watch. But when he walked out on her, I was like, good for you, dude.
Yeah, I absolutely loved how his story ended, and I thought it was so perfect. And, I love Les Miserables, and Javert is my favorite character. And some people think the story would be great if Javert realizes how wrong he is and joins Jean Valjean in the barricades. but that's not how that story ends. The story ends with the person who has clung all of his life to this belief in the system, that the system cracks, and he sees that it's not there, that it's not as solid as the stars in the sky, and he just can't take that, and ends his life. And in a way, I saw what Syril was doing was a mirror of that, a version of that, though a little bit different, because as you said, his starting point was these two men under my protection, under my watch, were killed. I have to solve that. And then, like it would have been kind of fun to see him join the rebellion and pick up, but I didn't want that. I was like, no, I don't think he's earned that, but also just like that would feel a little bit too, Christmas, like wrapped up with a bow.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it makes so much more sense that instead when he's like, well, everything I thought about the Emperor was wrong. Everyone I thought about this woman I worshipped and was in love with was wrong. But there's the person who I know, fuck the Empire, fuck the Security Bureau. That is a man who in his mind is a murderer who killed two people without provocation. Because again, he doesn't know the full story.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to that's who I'm just going to vent all of my anger and hate against. And it gets him killed by the person he wanted to help in the end, but who could only see him as having betrayed them because he had. It's so tragic and so perfect, and I loved it.
I remembered the older man that leads Ghorman. His name is Rylands.
Rylands, thank you.
Or Rylands.
Yeah.
And Syril, unbeknownst in his final act to attack Andor, also saves Dedra.
Yeah.
Unbeknownst to him. Because she would
To
have
be
been...
honest with you, I thought that I was like, well, maybe Syril saw that for a second.
I don't know if he saw anything except for just Andor's face. Like he saw Andor's face, I think he just saw red and was like,
yeah.
Here's the chaos among all this insanity, like here's the man I've been hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And like Matthew said, like it's his own sense of justice. He's followed his own belief of the sense of justice for so long. He's not afraid to go outside the rules sometimes.
Yeah.
And in the end, it was that thank you, Matthew, by the way. I'm gonna have like Les Mis in my head all day now. But
I don't know how you could watch this and not.
But I'm at the songs, but yeah, I agree. It's the same kind of arc, and like the fact that he was killed by what's his name, Erin?
Rylands,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's very fitting, and like the fact that like Syril kind of had the upper hand in Andor, not kind of, was gonna kill him. Like Andor lost. That was the one fight we kind of saw him just like outright lose.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. I liked Syril. It's a very tragic character, interesting story. And like obviously in the aftermath, Dedra was having a fucking panic attack, and like I couldn't tell if it was because she just had committed genocide or had lost Syril or both.
Literally, the nerve. I wrote this down. I was like, the nerve to have a panic attack when you just incited a riot and planned a massacre. Go fuck yourself,
Literal
girl.
genocide.
Nobody cares about your mental health.
I mean, mental health still is a thing, though. That would be a thing that would happen. But I get you. I'm not sympathetic for her for it.
No, yeah, exactly.
I heard an interview with Denise Goff, the actress who plays Dedra, and it just kind of brought it all perfectly into my head, because she talked about how when she first read the scripts, she was really worried because she thought it was going to have kind of the Hollywood story of like Syril would decide to leave the Empire, and she loved him so much that she would do the same. And she's like, that's not who Dedra is. And she said she was really happy like that Dedra gets to this moment where she does not choose her love. She chooses the Empire. She chooses advancement. And I like that. Like, I think it's easy to put the world into, there are people who are, totally cold and evil and Grand Moff Tarkin, and they'll pay any price and have no conscience, or people like Syril who will break and do something else. And she's kind of in the middle where she does to me, she's the person who, you're right, she plans all this because but in her mind, she wants it to happen over there. She doesn't want to have to see it directly. And to me, this was about her having to see firsthand, both in terms of the slaughter of the Ghorman people, but also even more directly, the slaughter of the guy she loved. That she left, that he left her and he died because of it. And yeah, to me it was a really like I had no sympathy for her. I was like, kind of like, yeah, this is what you did. This is your chickens coming home to roost. Like, you did this, but you wanted it to be just a theoretical thing you were doing. Now this blood is literally on your hands.
Yeah. And I want to say about Syril, part of me when he was killed with that headshot, which was diabolical, I really hoped it was just a stray shot. Like, I wanted his death to be so meaningless.
I can see
Like,
that.
just fuck him. Honestly, like, I wrote in my notes, I was like, that headshot was crazy, but honestly, like, abusers get what they deserve, I guess. Like, my man got put down. But I did also like, you know, the emotional beat and like closure that it was Rylands who killed him.
Right. Who had
But I
tried so
really,
hard
for a
not to
second
have this
there.
happen, who didn't want them to carry weapons, who, yeah.
Yeah, and like I don't know. I also think that like Dedra. I mean, so when if you all remember when I was at Celebration, the actress Denise literally said, much less girl boss this season, much more fascist, and that is exactly what it was. And like what people I think often forget, which I think is the genius of Dedra's character, is that like you said, Matthew. Sure, there are people in the world like a Grand Moff Tarkin who is just cold, calculating. Like those people are real, but the majority of people, the people that make the system work, make this like disgusting, horrible empire work, are the people like Dedra who have morals, has that second thought, is like, this is wrong, but believes enough in the system or is ambitious enough, wants to climb enough that she ignores, and people ignore those morals, they ignore that voice in their head and do what they're told anyway. Follow those horrible orders, even though they know they're wrong. So Dedra, I feel like, puts like, again, no sympathy for her, but she puts a truly human face to this rise and to this system, because without people like her, nothing can get done.
Yeah. No, I think it's very true.
Also, I appreciated in the actual filming of this, they did not shy away from showing, like, in the beginning of that riot, actual like people getting shot. Like, it was not like blasters, people far away. Like, that starts, and there's like people being executed at point blank range by these like Imperial soldiers.
Yeah.
It was scary, and like with the stormtroopers coming from, I was feeling suffocated, and like, the way they filmed it made you feel like you were in the middle of this being attacked and closed in. It's horrifying.
I don't know if you noticed this, 'cause it's so hard to notice something that's not there, but there was almost no music during that whole time.
No, I did notice that.
And I thought that was very much part of it. It was just the technical side of this was so brilliantly done. Like, the writing is great, but just every little detail like that was so lovingly put together.
Tony Gilroy gets it.
Yeah.
He really does.
He really gets it.
He really does.
Just for one other thing on that, like there was that one moment where one of the rebels throws something at some of the stormtroopers. I'm like, okay, it's going to be like a laser grenade or something like that. But you just hear the sound of glass breaking and then fire. And I was like, oh, that was just a straight up Molotov cocktail. Like, that was literally just the thing that rioters throw at cops when they're being just shot and stuff like that. Yeah, it was just the wall of, okay, this is a different world and it's different from ours, but you can still find the connection. Like, that wall is getting so thin with this show.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love that.
Yeah, it was very hard to see, but there was a brief moment like in the crowd where you could see one of the people handing out like the bottles with the rags in them. And it was very quick. Like, I barely noticed it, but like they did have a flash of that, of like them being handed out to people.
I noticed that because I was like, "What's that?" That's weird.
I watched that episode and I had to actually pause before I could start the next one, because I just was like, I was just sitting with so much. And before we move on to episode 9, I think we should just quickly mention the fact that I was aware how powerful security droids were. My God, something out of a nightmare. That was horrifying.
Yeah.
They were just they were ragdolling people.
Like,
just mowing through.
Mandalorian and those flashback scenes showing why Din Djarin is so afraid of droids had already kind of raised the bar. You know, 'cause you know me, I always thought the Roger and the the prequel droids were kind of silly, even the more battle ones. But that kind of like raised the bar on no, these can be scary. And then this came along and said, hold my beer.
Yeah.
And like just the fact that that woman who'd been such an important part of the movement, and whose name unfortunately I forget as well. I think she's the daughter of the leader we've been talking about.
She is, yeah.
And like, yeah, again, is she gonna die some big important death? No, a guy just like kicks a road barricade thing, and it hits her, and she flies like 30 feet through the air and dies.
Just hits her head on the ground and dies. It's
Yeah.
insane, unbelievable.
Like I kept waiting for them to have weapons, but they didn't have weapons. They didn't need them. They were just terrifying.
Just monstrous.
And we got to see how we did eventually get to see how K2 came to be. We got the one that it's so funny. The one that K2's origin story is that he was gonna kill Andor on Ghorman, and then he was just like get saved in the last second by was it Willem? Is that his name? Willem?
No, that was a different guy.
No, the other guy. The other guy.
Was that the guy that shot Cinta?
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. I did not put that together.
And again, I love that because it was a little bit of redemption for him. But Andor's like, I kind of recognize you. Like, it's not this big, like, tie it all together moment. It's just like, yeah, these are all the same people. But it felt like there was just always, like, they could have gone one step further into tropes, and they didn't. And they kept just trusting us to know how this all worked.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, the whole world wasn't watching necessarily. The whole galaxy wasn't watching. But go ahead.
Run it back. I actually have something to say about Wilman.
Yeah, please. Let's talk about
Wilman. Motherfucker. Wherever they go, he's just like, I'm deeply in love, and she means everything to me, and I can't leave without her, and I have to be by her. And it's like, the lifestyle you live, for one, you're a fugitive. That's where you started from. And now you've now you have proceeded to like rebel/terrorist. And bro, like you can't always, like, you gotta move on. Like, you can't live this lifestyle and be this way. So when he went back for that girl, I was with Cassian. I was like, bonk him, bump. Guys, I don't know why I'm having a lot of trouble with words. Excuse me.
Words are hard.
When he was telling Cassian, like, I have to go, and Cassian was like, no, you don't. Like, I was like, honestly, Cass, just bonk him on the head. Like,
yeah.
Lights out.
I mean, at least, like, the woman he's with this time isn't some, like, doughy-eyed girl he got caught up in this. Like, she's the voice of Radio Free Ghorman. She is as dedicated to the fight as he is, maybe even more so. But yeah, he was kind of the James T. Kirk of the Rebel Alliance for these couple of years. I thought that was an interesting little detail.
I was very happy to see he survived, though, because that was something that I was very nervous about from the start. Because we had talked earlier in the season about, like, every 3-episode arc, it wouldn't be surprising if we had, like, a known character, like, die somehow. Because we lost Brazo in the first. Yeah,
Brazo
in the first.
And then Cinta in the second.
Yeah, Cinta. And I was like, don't take the boy. Don't do it. Don't do it. And they didn't do it.
Syril was not in my top 5 of people who would lose this arc.
Honestly, I don't think me either. I really wanted it to be Dedra. Like, I knew Cassian wouldn't do it, but I was like, can somebody else get to it? Like, I don't know.
I mean, a reminder, none of these characters are in Rogue One. So, like, theoretically,
of course, that doesn't mean they all have to die.
Yeah.
We didn't see every single rebel in Rogue One or Imperial officer.
I know, but I feel like Dedra is big enough and Luthen are big enough. They probably, at least one of them are dying in the next arc, I would predict.
Wait, there's not more episodes, are there?
There's 3 more.
Any of them could have been on the Death Star.
This is not the end, Aaron. We're in 2 BBY. There's one arc next week.
Yeah, we only have 3 more episodes left, which I'm so mad about.
2 more?
The show is so
or
good.
3 more?
1 more arc, 3 more episodes.
Oh, yeah.
But on that subject, because it's one of, to me, not the meat of episode 9, but one of the things that I loved most about it. Let's talk about a character who it looks like is not going to die, who a lot of people expected would have to die to set up Cassian's character, Bix. What did you all think of the way Bix kind of left the show?
Bruh.
It pissed me off, but I get it. It didn't piss me off, honestly. It's like fully I get it, but I'm just kind of like, I wish we could have some more like healthy communication in Star Wars.
That'd be nice.
I think a lot of people would be happier. I mean, obviously they had to get rid of her, so I guess I'm glad she didn't die because that would be much more traumatic.
Yeah, I think especially after Cinta's death, which we're probably gonna do an episode about on superhero ethics because there's like a lot of reasons why it made a lot of sense, but also some of the bury your gaze stuff comes up and like some reasons why I think it could have been done better or had another character die instead. But with Bix, I think especially that kind of set up that for Bix especially, if she also died, it was yet another woman of color dying to kind of help advance Cassian's story. It was going to be hard. And there was a lot of people talking about like we really want to see Bix survive somehow, and I definitely was one of them. And I'm torn on it because I'm so happy. I'm not even torn. I think it's a great moment, but it leaves me feeling torn on Bix herself because I agree with you about communication, but I'm also a really big believer in both individual choices, but also the idea that like everyone has to give what they can to the cause, but be willing to step back when they need to and let someone else step up. And, you know, and granted, the nonprofit world is not, you know, literally fighting, life and death on the battlefields, but there's an awful lot of burnout in nonprofit worlds, and a lot of burnout among activists. A lot of activists who wind up turning very conservative later in life, and a large part of it is because they completely burn out. They never stop. And so there's a kind of part of me that's like, Bix, it's not your plate. Like if for Bix to say directly to Andor, I can't be the reason you leave the rebellion, so don't leave it for me because I'm not going to run off with you, I would have totally gotten that. For her to say, I'm going to leave so that you have to stay, so that you have no reason to leave, felt kind of like it was wonderful writing. It 100% made sense to me. For me feeling about her character, I'm like, that's kind of a shitty thing to do. But I also get why you did it, and I love that the writers had her do that, like you said, instead of dying.
Yeah, like it makes sense, but it's also making a decision for someone else, which is like very toxic and problematic in relationships. Like an ultimatum based on your opinions only and the other person gets no say is like...
Right.
I feel like I saw it. Yes, you were correct, Erin. That is yes. But maybe I saw it a little differently. I think I saw it just in like she very strongly believed what that Force-sensitive woman had told her, but like Andor has a mission. Andor has a big role to play here. And I think in Bix's eyes, she was going to hold him back, not for herself, but basically Andor was going to hold himself back because of her. And because of that, the rebellion would flounder. Something important would not happen because I think she so firmly believed that Andor needed to be part of this for this rebellion to work. And so from my perspective, at least, I think she was like, I don't want to give up Andor. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to be gone. But like, for the sake of the rebellion, for the sake of the galaxy, for the sake of everything,
right,
I have to. Like, it almost felt like she was like, I don't feel like I have a choice. And to me, that was confirmed just because at the end, the heartbreaking part of that message is, I will find you when this is all over, when we win. I was like, sister, I did not need to hear that. I know what happens to Cassian.
I get that, and that's why like I'm not mad at her for it. Like I think all the things you're talking about are correct, Alex. But I think, Erin, I'm with you of like, but still she could have let him make that choice and be a part of it. You know, to me, what I compare it to, which is funny because this doesn't have anywhere near the emotional weight, but I think is a better version of a similar conversation at the end of the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie, when Mary Jane is like, yes, Peter Parker, I want to be with you. I know you're Spider-Man, but I can't because you need to be Spider-Man. But she says that to him. She says it directly. She allows him to be part of the conversation, and he kind of agrees with her. And so, yeah, I kind of would have wanted that. But, like, other than that, she didn't have to die. She gets to go off and do her own thing. I freaking love that. Obviously, that was kind of a side story to the larger main story that was happening, which was we get to see the moment where Mon Mothma realizes she no longer can be a part of the Senate. She has to go outside the system and officially form the Rebel Alliance. this was a scene that, because we had, for those who are not quite sure, like, what are the connections here that we're talking about, in this TV show Star Wars Rebels, which we've done coverage of, and we will do coverage of again with these folks, was one of the best pieces of Star Wars media out there. Strongly recommend it. But there's an episode that basically shows the Phoenix crew being the people who meet up with her and Erskine and take her safely to Yavin. And as part of that, we see her give like the second part of the speech to the rebels of like, come and join me. And so there's a lot of kind of build up and curiosity, and like, would this erase parts of the rebels canon, and how would this feed into it? How did you all feel about how this did in terms of like telling this side of that story?
I feel like it made perfect sense.
Yeah.
And I kind of honestly loved that nothing was brought up or referenced to the Phoenix Squad. Because, like, I mean, on one hand, like, the rebellion should be secretive. But I like to think it's like, we're still in the, not like to think maybe, but it's like, we're so early in the rebellion that everyone is still very secretive. Like, they don't know anything about each other. You know, like, Ahsoka was Fulcrum for the longest time.
Right.
She would send other people to meet up with them. Like, Luthen never meets up with people except for like the head honchos, the people he really needs.
You've actually shown me how brilliant it is, because, and Mon Mothma specifically calls out that secrecy, and so I kind of like I think we've kind of established that like, once she gets to Yavin, she's like, no, we got to be a little more open. We got to be all working together. But yeah, given that, I think it would go against that if they knew like, oh yeah, this pseudo Jedi is going to pick you up, or like, this great person Harrison Dule is going to pick you up.
Dude,
yeah.
I just rewatched Rebels 2. It was annoying me that I'm mixing some things up. Is that the episode? That is the episode where like Ahsoka first reveals herself to the crew, right?
I don't think
The
it's the same
episode with Mon Mothma? No.
Isn't it because like, you're not allowed on my ship? If you're all on this ship, who's piloting the other ship, and then Ahsoka comes down, or is that a different episode?
That was a different episode.
Okay. So was that before or after?
Like, she
Ahsoka was
revealed
revealed?
herself, I think, at the end of season 1.
Was it season 1?
I think it was.
I don't want us to go too down this rabbit hole.
Yeah, sorry. My point in all this was, I was just like hoping. I didn't need to see Phoenix Squadron, but I was hoping for like a reference as well. I will say I was like either a Fulcrum reference or a Phoenix Squadron, because they mentioned Gold Squadron, like like Gold Squadron is going to be bringing her the rest of the way. And I was like, oh, Gold Squadron, that's what what Ezra and all of them fought with, and I immediately thought back to the Rebels episode, and I will say they kept referencing she's going to give a speech. She's going to give a speech. Like, they were referencing things that happened in Rebels that I did appreciate.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like a little like Gold Squadron and Phoenix Squadron are going to bring her in. That could have been kind of fun.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
I'm torn. I think I would have enjoyed that fan service moment, but I do think, Erin, your point is correct that like it actually works better for the plot. I think that we don't get it, but yeah, it's you can see it either way. But I also did love that they kind of also covered their bases a bit, and again, reminding us that like you've got to use the tools you can. They kind of they say like, okay, but the official story is going to be that this other thing happened, and I feel like that was also kind of a little bit of a way of saying, if this doesn't exactly line up with Rebels, we have a little bit of a some wiggle room there, which I kind of love. That the Rebels are doing some of their own propaganda too. But let's talk about then how we'll talk about her speech in a second. Let's talk about how she comes to give this speech. And this is where we get to talk about the Benjamin Bratt of it all, because one of the key people who really helps her decide to do this and then help basically cover her by not leaving is Bail Organa. And we talked last time about how we didn't love that it was a bit recast, but that we kind of understood why. Having now seen Benjamin Bratt as Bail, I still want Jimmy Smits back at some point, but I think he was dead on perfect. It took me maybe 15 seconds to recognize that this was just Bail Organa now, and that was okay.
It was.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it was very, very good.
Yeah.
I agree. And this episode felt very much like Bail, the way he has always been. It was just shocking in the first time we saw him, and it was such a short interaction. You couldn't really get that.
I was still bothered by it.
I don't know. I kind of thought it was perfect. Also, like
Sorry.
Roy said that I'll let you talk about it in a second. I just doing it a week before to give us that week to get through it. And honestly, I don't know if I could have heard, like, Jimmy Smits has been our Bail Organa in a lot of the stuff that was for all ages, but clearly aimed at more of a younger audience. I don't know if I could have heard Jimmy Smits Bail Organa swear the way he does when he's like, tear this shit up or whatever he says. I was like, oh, this is Bail Organa after dark. Okay, I don't know if I could have heard that from Jimmy Smits, but
That caught me by surprise too. I was like, wait, do they say swear words in Star Wars? Like normal swear words? Like what happened to Carabast?
I mean, Carabast is still there, but like I think Andor, this is the second time it's happened, but still pretty rare. They certainly do in books, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I don't know. I understand why it had to happen because of scheduling stuff, but he has been the same actor, the same person, the same voice, the same everything for me in Star Wars for so long that it was really throwing me off. I kept feeling like it was the same thing again I talked about last week, that I felt like I was watching the Solo movie again, where I couldn't, my brain couldn't do it. I was like, you're not, who is this person cosplaying as Bail Organa? I'm very carried himself properly. There's just not at any level is this a reflection of how well the actor did. I think that the portrayal of the character was very true, very good. I had no issues with any of that. They didn't really take me out of it. It's just that's not who Bail Organa is for me, and it's very hard for me to see it that way.
The actor in Solo just wasn't Han Solo to me, so I totally get that. But yeah, let's just then talk about sort of his role then in helping Mon, and what do you think of just Mon's journey in this to coming to the point where she's ready to make that speech and the way she does it?
I think the buildup over the last 6 episodes of just her kind of losing connection and being betrayed slowly by every single person around her. And then when that one final, like her protege, the person she like took in when he was a child, like has been spying on her for 2 years.
Yeah.
I feel like she was just like, no, fuck it. Like, I mean, one, I can't stay in the Senate anymore for like political reasons. Like I have to say something and I can't stay here afterwards. But I feel like it was just like put her in like a very mentally like a mental solitude maybe, so that she could really like dive into the speech.
Yeah, in some ways I feel like her journey is kind of a reverse of Syril's, that both of it is about them believing in the institutions and then eventually losing faith. And I do think that book Mask of Fear that we read also really helped me in this, because that's I think another important part of her journey. And like when you realize like she doesn't try to get her husband or her daughter to join her. She's just like, I'm just going to peace out. They're doing their thing and I need to be part of this rebellion and I need to give up all of that too. And for me, I kind of feel like her journey in this is a masterclass of what it means to be willing to give up, to both use privilege, but then to realize the point at which you have to give it up. Because for a long time she's able to say, look, yes, I am rich, I am powerful, but I can work within the system and try to make things better in the way that I can, while supporting people like Luthen and others who are doing, the exact opposite, or working for the same goal from a very different direction. But she gets to the point where she's like, if I keep doing this, then I'm just allowing myself to dance at the wedding, that I'm just hiding. And eventually some point she's like, I have to take the risk too. And in some ways, the fact that she realizes that she can't even trust Luthen the way that she thought she could, it just felt like, like everything had been torn away from her, and this was all she could do to say, I can't keep trying to be comfortable with this. I can't keep trying to keep my hands clean. I have to dive in as fully as Saw and Luthen and them do.
I mean, it's interesting, this arc, we didn't see much Mom, but like nothing of her husband. We haven't seen her daughter since the wedding. Her friends are like dead or they're missing. And like the point I think is to make us feel like she is so incredibly alone. Like I got very excited last night and just wrote this like little Instagram story because I was like, this is the greatest television ever. And I like mentioned, I was like, the fact that to fight tyranny can sometimes be like the most isolating, lonely thing. And like she basically like, even though Luthen and Clay were both like, without Mon Mothma, it all ends. It all falls apart. Like she's the key basically to the rebellion.
Right.
She's the leader we need. And obviously, you know, through the Mandalorian, we know that she eventually becomes Chancellor of the New Republic. Like she truly was the leader they needed. But like to get to that point, everything this woman sacrificed. I mean, it's just I mean, the character of Mon Mothma, I feel like, has just over the years, more than a lot of characters, has just benefited so much from the additional shows and creation. And like she's grown from just this mystical woman in white that we saw briefly at a briefing in episode 6 to the face of the rebellion in a lot of ways. And it's just, I don't know, it's very like, it's just very special. And her performance has been so special for so many years, and to see her get such a large role in season 2, and I have like dreamt of what this speech would look like for so long, like between the mention in Rebels and just all these different ways of like Mon Mothma stood up to the Emperor, and god damn did she deliver on that speech. Oh my god, I was like, can we just play this like at every television in America right now? Like the people need to hear what she has to say. And
For real.
I almost like half was expecting her to say, and the monster is, I wasn't expecting Emperor Palpatine. I was expecting Donald Trump at the end. But it was incredible. Like it was incredible how her courage shone through. And then the actual speech was just like, I teared up. I started crying a little bit. It was so good.
Yeah, it was intense, and I loved that. Again, we got kind of like in the background of the speech. It reminded me of like the first 3 episodes where it was switching between like Mon dancing and then like Brasso dying.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And how it's like Mon giving this speech, and then it's like the Empire just scrambling to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
And just, it took me a second to figure out. I was like, who the fuck is this guy? And why is he running around? And then I just realized he's whatever engineer got sent to cut the power.
Yeah.
But yeah, the speech was incredible. I will say, I think that side quest kind of distracted me from the full speech. So I'm gonna need to go back and like really listen some other time, because it was also pretty late at night.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing a Google search and I can't find the full text of it. So if anyone, any of our listeners have that, please send it to me. But yeah, I did like, I love the tension building, especially during her escape, and I think I did like the running around, but it was a little like, I wish they kind of give us more of the full speech just as one thing. Although I do think that what they kind of allowed for as well there is like, because we saw some breaks in her speech, it allows for the parts of the speech that we saw in Rebels that aren't in this, like they happened, you know, when she was off camera.
Right, exactly.
But I have that same thing. First of all, just kind of like going back a bit, but Alex, a lot of what you were saying was kind of echoing what Erin had said originally about, you know, the solitude that she was in and how that was just kind of, everything was gone. And Erin, you brought up the dancing again. I think that's the point. That's like she had realized she can't do that anymore. She can't be dancing while Brazzo's getting shot. And then for the speech itself, what hit me so hard, and this, Alex, what you were saying about how we wish that like some more people would see this, is this line: I believe we're in a crisis. The distance between what is said and what is known to be true has become an abyss. Of all the things at risk, the loss of objective reality is perhaps the most dangerous. The death of truth is the ultimate victory of evil. When truth leaves us, when we let it, let's take it apart. The death of truth is the ultimate victory of evil. I mean, that is 100% about the United States right now. And other parts as well. I mean, like one of the first things fascism does is to get people to, you know, don't believe your lying eyes. Listen to what the state is telling you. That's the heart of 1984. That's the heart of so many of these things. And it's what's happening now when we're being told, like, no, it's not a genocide in Gaza. No, you know, Trump is peaceful and this is all good for the economy. No, you know, they're getting like all of these things, you know, everything about vaccinations or peace deals or whatever, we're just being straight up lied to. And we're being told that the objective reality we know is that the truth is not the truth. And more people are believing it. And like there's absolutely no way that Gilroy wasn't 100% thinking about the modern moment as he wrote this, and it just makes it so powerful because it doesn't feel shoved in. It doesn't feel like he wanted to shove his own political agenda into Star Wars. It felt like Star Wars just is a good description of what's happening right now in the world, and he was naming that and naming what the Emperor was doing.
Yeah, and Matthew just quoted the exact line I was going to quote, because that part just like lives rent free in my head, and just like it's so and then like the part that like I mentioned before, like when she says that, I'm gonna skip, but when she says that like when truth leaves us, when we let it slip away, when it's ripped from our hands, we become vulnerable to the appetite of whatever monster screams the loudest. Then she says a little more, but then she says, you know, the monster screaming the loudest, the monster we've helped create, the monster who will come for us all soon enough is Emperor Palpatine. But again, like in my head, you could just swap Emperor Palpatine out for Donald Trump, because that's what Gilroy was writing it for. Because like, you know, when you take away objective truth, you know, who is yelling the loudest, who is screaming the loudest? It's this man who's running our country, right? Who's running America right now, and it's happening in other parts of the world, like you said. But you know, I think that it again, it speaks to like the idea that if people don't know who to believe or what to believe, they're just going to believe who acts the most confident, even if they're completely wrong. And it's horrifying. That speech felt like it should be given by an actual senator in the U.S. And it obviously was not. But I mean, you replace Ghorman with Gaza, you replace Emperor Palpatine with Donald Trump. Like, you place a few words, and that's an actual speech that can be said in America right now. And this is supposed to be the most evil empire to ever exist, and like a dark, villainous Sith Lord, murderous man running it all. Like, to draw these comparisons, this is not by accident. This is very, very direct, very definitive. And to me, the fact that Donald Trump just posted on May 4th an image of him holding a red lightsaber and was basically like, all you leftists, you know, may the 4th be with you, even the leftists who are, you know, always, you know, terrible things. And he goes, you think you're the rebellion, but no, you're the empire. And I'm like, bro, the fact that these episodes and this speech dropped 3 days after he did that, or 2 days after he did that, it's just like poetic justice. It's just, he's the monster screaming the loudest, throwing a tantrum, and then also incorrectly putting himself out there. Like, I'm a Jedi, bro. You're holding a red lightsaber. You're a Sith Lord. Like, what are we doing here? But all that to say, it was really ironic that like he did that right before the speech was released, because Tony Gilroy is very clearly making a point about him.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of where we end off. Like, we've covered most of the things. Is there anything more, people? Erin, some of the last comments you wanted to make?
No.
I have one last very small comment, and it's just
Go
that
for it.
I want to appreciate the fact that Andor helped Mon Mothma escape, and then is told, you will not be remembered for this. No one will know that you did this. We're going to give the glory to Ghost Squadron. We have to rewrite the narrative to make it more symbolic for the rebellion. And Andor just kind of like accepts it. And I just really appreciate that, like, he continues to be like, again, the rebellion doesn't happen without all of the sacrifice, all the things Andor has done. Like, he's the ultimate rebel spy. And then he even when he dies in Rogue One, he dies without anyone really, like, no one knows him specifically. It's just, they just like, you know, you will be remembered, Rogue One. Like, he dies without being remembered. And that is so often what it takes to win these fights in these wars, is these individuals who sacrifice everything without being remembered for the greater good. And I think that was a really powerful message that was being sent.
It really was, and I guess one of the part of his arc that we didn't talk about is that this, and granted a lot of it's Bix, but I think it's not just Bix, it's just as much Mon Mothma, where he decides that he doesn't want to just be like a lone rebel who comes and goes as he chooses, but to straight up be, you know, a part of the Alliance. And as we'll get to in Rogue One, I think he becomes a little bit too eager to just listen to orders instead of overthinking them. Although he does, you know, in terms of his decision to try and kill Galen Erso and all that instead of trying to rescue him. But yeah, I think but of course he doesn't get to. But oh my god, I want to go rewatch these episodes again and again. And again. I'm both so excited that we're gonna get one more arc, and so disappointed that it's gonna be the last one. But I don't want to say that like this is like all other Star Wars is bad. There's a lot of Star Wars that shouldn't be this dark. Like I love that I can watch Skeleton Crew because there's some times where just this is way too heavy and this is way too intense, and I need Skeleton Crew, and I want the dark philosophy and ethics of Acolyte, and I want the silliness of droid things and all of that. But I think this is just the best Star Wars media we've ever gotten, and it's just getting better.
Yep, I agree. And it's okay, Matthew. Next arc, at least we're finally getting K2. Like this whole arc ended with K2 coming to life in the sassiest way possible, and we're gonna finally get K2 back in live action.
I think we've learned that you can't have Alan Tudyk and be too dark and gritty. You know, there's just a level of joy that he brings that is always going to be there. Well,
The way he said, "I'm sorry if I offended you, but if not, could you point that somewhere else?"
Yeah.
It's like, damn.
This was also a great week for another Star Wars property. Just a couple days ago on May the 4th, we got Tales from the Underworld. We were thinking about doing that as a little bit for bonus members. We'll probably do that next week. We're definitely going to do a full episode on Tales of the Underworld, but unfortunately, this episode's already gone pretty long. I want to make sure we wrap it up, and Parks, I got to go do some getting ready for baby things. But I'm going to a baby 101 class, which I think will be very interesting about what we learn and don't learn. But yeah, so that'll be, I'm really looking forward to talking about it. I want to thank both of you so much for giving me new ways to think about this. Both of you kind of pointed out things that I missed, and I just love our discussions. To our audience, I love you guys so much. Please let us know your thoughts. Please let us know your thoughts and predictions for the last episodes. Maybe we'll even do like kind of a one on just your thoughts before we go into it, and then do the final one. Let us know. Become a member. $5 a month, $55 a year. Buy a lightsaber. Buy an Audible subscription. They all help us out. All the information in the show notes. But most importantly, live long and prosper.
Stay classy, Ghorman.
R.I.P. Ghorman.
Yeah.
The trigger. You're the finger.